Not too long ago, Billy and Sandy Marshall began collecting food for the Bradford School Food Drive. It's held every Thanksgiving. When the children got to a house, they told whoever answered the door that the food was for people who wouldn't be able to have a nice Thanksgiving dinner without a little help. Almost everyone gave something: some canned meat, a loaf of bread, a bag of flour, or some vegetables. As you can see, the collection was a big success. Now, all the food had to be separated for delivery. It would be a lot of hard work and would take several hours. As everyone separated the cans and boxes, they passed the time by talking. After a while, they took a break with Mrs. Ryan, one of the teachers at Bradford School.
All this food going to others reminds me of what the Wampanoag Indians did.
Who are the Wampanoags?
Well, the Wampanoags were the Native Americans who brought food to the Pilgrims, a group of people who settled in America hundreds of years ago. They came in their ship, the Mayflower, from England, a country across the ocean. The Wampanoags brought 5 deer to the Pilgrims' first harvest celebration. The animals were made into a large stew. Miguel?
Was that the first time there was a Thanksgiving?
Well, historians say it was really more of a harvest celebration than the kind of Thanksgiving we celebrate today. You see, the Pilgrims didn't know how cold and snowy it would be in America, so they weren't prepared for their first winter here. Many of them died from cold and hunger. The next year, however, was much better for the Pilgrims. Those who had survived worked hard in their fields and gardens, and all that hard work paid off. The Pilgrims had enough food for the cold, long winter ahead, so they made bread, grilled fish, and other foods, and had a celebration. The Pilgrims came to America because they were very religious, but they weren't allowed to practice their beliefs in England. So they came to America, where they could worship as they pleased.
You know how you said the celebration wasn't the first Thanksgiving? Well, if the Pilgrims didn't have the first Thanksgiving, then who did?
Nobody knows for certain. In England, where the Pilgrims came from, farmers decorated carts with ribbons after their harvest each autumn, and then had what were called home festivals, celebrations something like Thanksgiving. More than 1,000 years before that, the people who lived in the country of Greece held a 9-day harvest celebration, during which they honored Demeter, their goddess of agriculture. Other ancient harvest celebrations were held in Africa, from which we get the modern celebration, Kwanzaa. In Asia, where harvest celebrations were sometimes held in royal courts. And here in North America, where many Native Americans gave thanks for their harvests, often Indian corn, long before the Pilgrims arrived. The holiday we know as Thanksgiving slowly developed over hundreds of years. But many of the things we think of as being a part of Thanksgiving today were started by people who lived in New England, the area where the Pilgrims settled. Of course, over the years, the holiday has changed in some ways.
Like now we have Thanksgiving parades. My Aunt Susan takes me to see them every year. Do you know what my family does? We watch football on TV every Thanksgiving.
Well, people have been watching and playing games at Thanksgiving for a very long time. Did you know that many years ago, baseball was usually played on Thanksgiving, not football? Wampanoag children played a game called Hubbub. Some people think that it might have been played during the Pilgrims' first harvest celebration. Hubbub was usually played with 2 and sometimes 4 people. A bowl and 5 bones were used. The bones were colored on one side. one of the players tossed the bones into the air. If 3 of one color and 2 of another landed face up in the bowl, the tosser received 1 point. If the bones came up 1 and 4, the tosser lost his turn and the other player would have a chance to toss the bones. If the bones landed with only 1 color face up, he received 2 points. The first player to get 50 points would win.
Mrs. Ryan handed out her own version of the Wampanoag game after all the food was sorted and ready for delivery. Soon, everyone was happily playing. After a while, moms and dads arrived, and the bags of groceries were loaded into cars. The next day, Billy, Sandy, and their mother unloaded the bag of food at the place they were supposed to go, a small apartment house on the other side of town. It was rainy, blustery, and very chilly, so they were eager to get inside. Shortly, an elderly man opened the door of his apartment and greeted them. The 3 visitors could see that he hobbled unsteadily and needed a cane. The man told them that he had just come home from the hospital and wasn't able to shop for groceries. Billy and Sandy felt that he was very grateful and happy to receive the food. He said that it would make his Thanksgiving much happier. As the Marshall children left to return home, they felt warm all over, knowing that they had helped the elderly man have a nice Thanksgiving dinner. Later that day, the Marshall household was a beehive of activity. Each family member, including cousins and other relatives, was assigned a task to help prepare the big holiday feast. For many, Thanksgiving is a time for families to get together, one of the best traditions of the holiday. Later, Uncle Paul, the family comedian, read a book of Thanksgiving riddles to Billy and Sandy and their cousins, Peter and Jessica. Here are some of their favorites. If the Pilgrims were alive today, what would they be most famous for? Their age. Can a turkey fly higher than a skyscraper? Yes, skyscrapers can't fly. What do you get when you cross a turkey with an octopus? Enough drumsticks for Thanksgiving. What kind of music did the Pilgrims like? Plymouth Rock. Several hours later, as the Marshall family began their big turkey dinner, a cold, rainy wind blew outside, but inside, it was warm and cozy. About halfway through the meal, Grandfather Marshall asked Cousin Jessica what she was thankful for. "My family and friends," she said. Then, one by one, all the other children, and then all the grown-ups, told what they were thankful for. What do you think they said? And now it's your turn. Think about all the things that you can be thankful for. You might want to remember them when you celebrate your Thanksgiving this year. The Native Americans who brought food to the Pilgrims were the A. Cherokees, B. Navajos, C. Wampanoags. Why did the Pilgrims come to America? True or false? Harvest celebrations were held in ancient Greece, England, and Asia, but never in Africa. Hubbub was a Wampanoag game played with A. Sticks and stones, B. Bones and bowls, C. Balls and wickams. True or false? At one time, baseball was played on Thanksgiving. The Greek goddess of agriculture was A. Diana, B. Demeter, C. Minerva. The area where the Pilgrims settled, A. was cold and snowy in the winter, B. is called New England today, C. both A and B. Name 3 things people often do on Thanksgiving. True or false? The Wampanoags brought 5 trained bears to the Pilgrims' first harvest celebration. The Pilgrims came to America, A. so they could practice their religion, B. because they heard the streets there were paved with gold, C. to escape a famine in Ireland.